This new module in Ozone 10 will get you better mastering results. Let's check it out. The new module is called the stabiliser, and it's one of those innovative smart tools that allows the less experienced engineer who isn't working in the perfect space, so me, to get a better result. And it will make some engineers going to the mode of "they took our job," when really what this will do for those with more experience is massively reduce the time of working out cuts, boost, dynamic EQs, resonances, positions and ratios. The idea in a broad stroke is to simply give the input audio a better balanced output dynamically. To add it into Ozone, we'd simply go into our plus like we would normally here. It's in our list here for us of modules to add. Select it right here and let's just break down the GUI. It's new in Ozone. Right off the bat we've got Delta here, and that gives us our difference. So we can listen to that to hear exactly what's going on with the sound. Moving down, we'll look at this left hand panel here. Now first off, we've got this thing that says EDM in my case. What this is loading one of Izotope's tonal balance curves. So this is directly applying itself to emulate essentially a curve, kind of like a match EQ, but way more complex than that. Below this, we've then got the two options of shape and cut. So shape is going to reshape the sound into that matching curve, whereas cut is going to look to only remove and soothe or suppress frequencies, but still based on that initial curve. I've got it on cut for this example, but we will have a look at both. We've then got the amount. Obviously it's going to be the amount of that effect we can put into place. Speed and sensitivity. Speed is going to be very much like our attack on the compressor. How fast does this thing, if it has to do a really large boost to adhere to that tonal balance, how long does it hold there? How long does it take to get there? Really fast can sound okay, but we might want it to be a little bit slower, and depending on the sound source we're working with. And sensitivity again kind of goes hand in hand with amount. We're kind of looking like our amount and our mix control here. How much of this is going to be really easily triggered when it passes the threshold to be applied. We've got Tame Transients just below. That is its own beast. The section here look very much like it's split up like an EQ, right? We've got a frequency split across the bottom, and we've got our dynamic range on the right hand side. If we play something into it, we're going to get a response of what's going on. So right now we can see it's in cut mode, and we can see that when the snare triggers, for example, it's cutting around 3K, a little bit above 3K in that snare, and it's controlling those shakers as well. And we can see here how the amount and sensitivity really come into play. If I push the amount up, we're seeing a lot more reduction in terms of our dynamic range come out, right? And when amount's in more, it allows some other areas to even get pulled back that we couldn't see being pulled back before. And with sensitivity, if we push sensitivity up, you can see that gets exacerbated even more. It's a lot more responsive to the shakers. We can dial, say, the amount back, and we've now maintained that responsiveness, but it's being reduced by less, right? So going all the way down to maybe minus 6 dB, maybe back down to 30, it's only suppressing by as much as sort of 2 dB there. And that's the relationship of the sensitivity and the amount. And then speed, obviously, we bring speed right down. And that takes a lot longer to recover, and it's just not as responsive to the sound. And depending on what you're working with, this is going to have a detrimental effect. I'm working on a really fast BPM track that makes sense for the speed to be really quick. But if you're working on something that's much slower, say half the time of this with long sweeping sounds, you want to reduce that speed down, or it's going to seem really unnatural and not in time with the track. Okay, so let's now have a look at shape. And if we go over to shape, you can see that our settings have changed. Speed has changed, and we've now got smoothing. Now when I play the audio, we're going to see that in some places it boosts, in others it cuts. And it's doing its best at all times to match this EDM curve here. It can switch the curves and have, say, an all-purpose. Gives a little more high-end lift. Go for hip-hop. Gives us a much lower-end boost. Much like before, we can use the amount dial control. If we look at what smoothing does, it smooths out the overall EQ curve. Bring it right down, we get a lot more spikes and fine detail in where it's trying to balance. The smoothing is going to sound a bit more natural. You need to find the balance that works for your particular piece of audio. I'd really like to see here, much like with the new assistant view where you can load your own tonal balance curves, I'd love to see those curves come over into here as well. But as it stands at the minute, it is just isotope curves. But I am running a pre-release version of Ozone 10 here, so that may be something that's added in the future. Let's have a little look at Tame Transients now. This is a very transient track. There's lots of punchy drums and things going through, so we'll be able to hear this a lot. Put Tame Transients in, and it's just going to squish it all down a little bit, almost like glue, right? You can hear it now, really suppressing it. The idea of this is it makes it far more transmissible to other sources that you're going to listen on. And that's why with this particular track I was actually operating in the cut mode without the Tame Transients. And I'm just dialing it back myself there. Now the last thing that we haven't looked at just yet are the three controls at the bottom, and you can kind of think of them much like our speed, sensitivity and amount that we've got here, but for three separate bands. And for example, there was a lot of correction going on to the low, where actually, in my opinion, the low on this track is really well balanced. So I was to bring it up, I was experiencing this control here that I just didn't want to happen. So when we dial it back down to around 50%, it's now only controlling those mids and highs, which in this case is exactly what I was seeking. So instead of having just these global controls and being limited to that, these three extra parameters just let you split that apart a little bit more and have the control you're really after. Now the one final thing that we need to have a look at is the delta, and that will just let us hear the exact changes that are happening. So we can switch delta on. Now we can hear just what's being suppressed, and like I said, it was the 3K of that snare, and we can hear that really clearly. If you've got the ears for it, at the top of the shaker as well. Let's put the amount up a bit more so we can hear what's really being taken out. Now if we were to switch this to shape, we'd see a lot more. Now if we were to switch this to shape, we'd hear a lot more of a difference. So we can hear all parts of the spectrum and how they're being affected. So delta really gives us a magnifying glass to look in onto what we are doing. And it's really, really useful. This tool is going to get you better results. Like I say, I'd just like to be able to load my own curves into it. So that is a breakdown of the new stabiliser module in Ozone 10. The ability to dynamically adjust and match a tonal curve is amazing. And by giving some very simple but powerful control with the three bands, you can ease this off with some simple automation at the times it's not needed, like a breakdown in a track, for example, where it would benefit less from the tonal balance corrections of the loudest part of another track. And this is just one of thousands of functions that Ozone 10 can perform. If you really need to get a good grasp of the multiple concepts, a huge one is mid-side processing, something Ozone 10 does in almost every module. Learn the importance of this key technique by watching this video here next and further improve your mastering. I'll see you in the next one.